Hi everyone. Today I'll be looking at strategies for completing a given melody. While these strategies will be aimed at completing unaccompanied melodies for exams or tests, many of the concepts are applicable to composition in general. A common test question requires the candidate to compose a complete melody using a given opening. Typically, the choice of instrumentation is suggested, as is the length of the completed work. In the following hypothetical question, for example, this 2-bar opening must be extended for a total of 8 bars and is to be written for either clarinet or violin. Tempo and performance directions are also required. Before you begin to compose, there are several points to consider. From the suggested instruments, does the given melody suit one more than the other? Typically with exam or test questions, the given opening will lie within the ranges of both instruments and can therefore successfully be completed using either. However, it's a good question to ask as the choice of instrument can influence how you complete the tune. In our example, I will use the violin. If the clarinet or other transposing instruments are used, the completed score is typically written at sounding pitch. What key is the given opening in? Does the melody suggest major or minor, or can it be successfully completed in either? Some given melodies will definitely suggest minor, for example by including the raised leading note, while others, such as ours, are more ambiguous, with this melody able to be completed in either A minor or C major. Here I'll use A minor. What is an appropriate harmony or harmonies for the given opening? Even though here we are not required to include the harmony, it's important to always know what chord progression supports your melody. When considering appropriate harmony, it's also important to consider your location in the overall composition. For example, the melody in the first bar of a composition will often be supported by a tonic triad, as this sets the scene harmonically for the remainder of the tune. The notes of the first bar of our opening outline an A minor arpeggio, and can therefore be supported by a tonic triad in that key. If we were completing the opening using C major, we would probably use 2 harmonies, one for the first 2 16th notes and another for the 8th notes. The second bar of our opening can be harmonized using either a single chord or 2. As a single chord, the subdominant is probably the likely choice, while 2 harmonies could be the supertonic and dominant 7th. Remember, if including 7ths, they must be correctly prepared and resolved. In our example, I will use the subdominant for the second bar. Another consideration is the rhythm or note values used in the given opening. As a guide to the types of rhythms we could or should be using in the remainder of the work, those of the opening should be considered. Here we have a pair of 16th notes, a pair of 8th notes, and a pair of quarter notes. When completing our 8 bars, therefore, it's probably unlikely that we'll need to introduce any other rhythms, although developing these is possible. Adding 2 more 16th notes, for example, to create a group of 4 is an obvious development, as is dotting a quarter note. 2 more points before we can continue. When composing, you should always try to imagine how it should sound when finished. Imagine also how the instrument would be played, even if you don't play the instrument you're writing for. Doing so adds a further level to your composition and will help you to decide the tempo and performance directions. Now you're ready to continue the composition. Because you have a set length, write in the remaining bar lines. This will give you an idea of where events should occur. For example, music is often divided into 4-bar phrases. 8 bars of music will therefore typically include 2 cadences, one in bar 8 and one in bar 4. The cadences will give the ends of these phrases a sense of repose. Because the types of cadences are standard, after deciding which type you'll be using, sketch in the implied harmony at the cadential points. I'll be using perfect cadences for both. As you can see, sketching in your cadences gives you a harmonic blueprint and therefore your melody its phrasal endpoints. A common extension to a perfect cadence is to precede the dominant with supertonic harmony, creating a 2-5-1 progression. You can also therefore sketch in these chords at the cadential points, but remember, these suggestions may be modified or discarded later. With the full cadences indicated, you can now sketch in the remaining harmony. Remember, the primary triads, the tonic, subdominant, and dominant chords should be used most often. The others are used for variety. Whichever chords you use, however, the progressions you create should be typical of progressions found in tonal classical music. For example, the supertonic should typically move to the dominant, either directly or through another chord. Because I've already preceded my final cadence with a supertonic, here I'll use the tonic. Also, because this is an interior cadence, I want to maintain the momentum into the next phrase. I'll therefore include another chord in this bar. The tonic to subdominant progression has already been used in our given opening, so for variety I'll use the submediant after the cadence. The remaining chords may now be sketched in. I've used the primary triads most frequently, particularly the tonic and dominant. If we were required to compose a piano accompaniment, we would probably need to use inversions to vary the progression. Here, for example, inversions added to this 2-5-1 progression would differentiate it from the final cadence, which could be in root position. Because we only need to complete the melody, however, we can now proceed. Leaving aside the inspirational and emotional aspects of writing music, at its most basic level, a tonal melody consists of harmony and non-harmony notes. Because harmony notes are already present in the underlying chords, they tend to sound more stable than non-harmony notes. Non-harmony notes are more restless, as they typically want to move on to a harmony note. Even though we're only completing the melody, these observations still apply. The sketch of our progression gives us a harmonic framework on which we can structure our melody. This may seem a little artificial, however, particularly for those new to composition, it can be a means of bridging the gap from initial inspiration to the finished work. Also, the steps we've followed so far still occur even when some compositional experience is attained, the only difference being, with more experience, the melody and harmony are typically composed simultaneously. When composing a melody, it needs to have an overall shape, not only across phrases, but from one bar to the next. Often melodies possess recurring shapes such as an arch. Arch shapes are probably one of the most common melodic shapes, as they include a drive to the highest and possibly loudest point before descending. Using the arch shape as a model, a possible melody can now be sketched in. As you can see, although I haven't used the rhythms of the given opening for the remaining bars, the overall shape of certain bars follow the general contour of the opening. For example, here the descent and ascent of bar 1 is echoed with the partial arpeggios of the supertonic and dominant chords. Although the melody is essentially written using harmony notes with non-harmony notes occurring on offbeats, several accented non-harmony notes are included. Here, for example, an appoggiatura, and here an accented passing note. Remember, although we're not required to write an accompaniment, our composition should be written keeping the underlying chords in mind. Therefore, when completing your melody, think about the placement of harmony and non-harmony notes and the mix of these two elements. When the melody is complete, tempo and performance directions can be added. The tempo can be a single word, such as allegro or moderato, or can be descriptive. At the very least, changes of dynamics should be indicated. Hairpins should probably also be included for extra shaping of the melody. In this example, the highest point of the arch occurs in bar 6. A gradual increase of volume will probably accompany the lead up to this event. A decrease will also probably occur after. Some articulation can also be added, such as accents, slurs, or staccato signs. A couple of final points. Make sure your melody remains in the range of your chosen instrument. Knowledge of various instruments is another aspect tested by this type of question. And finally, make sure all necessary resolutions of sevenths and leading notes occur, and that all necessary accidentals are included. Remember, although not always used in a minor key, the leading note is often raised, particularly at cadences. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.